In the frozen desolation known as the White Wasteland, fearsome creatures dominate the land. A massive white serpent devours glaciers with ease. Reshaping the terrain nearby, a gray bear rumbles across the tundra, triggering earthquakes beneath its thunderous steps. Deep within polluted waters, a vile beast poisons the sea, corrupting life itself. These monsters are legendary, each representing a force of destruction. Yet, an emperor once claimed that the true terror of the wasteland wasn't the beasts, it was something else. A group of humans marched into this icy hell, braving the cold and its monstrous denizens. But it wasn't the monsters that brought dread, it was the presence of a lone barbarian. As glaciers collapsed and enemies attacked, the barbarian fought with overwhelming force. His battle instincts outmatched the creatures of the snow, his roars echoing louder than any beast. Amid battle, he wielded a glowing weapon, slashing through enemies with deadly precision. Others looked on, wary of his strength and brutal style. Some mocked his appearance, calling him savage, but none could deny his effectiveness. One moment he was fighting, the next reprimanding a comrade for foolishly eating poison. Savage though he appeared, this barbarian was no mindless brute, he was the wasteland's greatest threat. Among the group, Greta and the others stood proud, bragging about completing a noble challenge. However, the woman's excitement masked a deeper unease. When pressed on her supposed achievement, something in Greta's broke. His body trembled uncontrollably, and without warning, she collapsed. Unconscious in the snow, the woman rushed to his side, panicked and shouting Greta's name. The woman shook him, desperate to wake him, but he remained unresponsive. One companion, likely closest to him, knelt by his side, shouting with urgency. The cold winds howled around them, but Greta didn't stir. Roan of the men turned away from the group, walking off into the snowstorm, consumed by quiet frustration. As snowflakes swirled around him, his thoughts drifted. "This isn't what I wanted," he muttered. His journey, once fueled by dreams of fantasy and adventure, had taken a darker turn. He had left behind a normal life, seeking purpose and challenge. He climbed mountains, crossed deserts, and explored the deepest oceans. Still, nothing filled the emptiness. So he prayed, night after night, for something beyond the mundane. And one day, his prayer was answered. Now part of a caravan heading into the deadly White Wasteland, he faced bitter winds, reluctant allies, and a reward that might never be worth the cost. Inside the warmth of a noble estate, a debate stirred. The blue-haired noblewoman, Milena of the Akasha family, looked out the frosted window at the shivering expedition team. Her butler scoffed at the group's poor manners, but Milena defended them. They were the only ones brave enough to venture into the White Wasteland. Despite their suffering, the butler refused to bring them inside. He warned her, those who return from the wasteland speak of unspeakable dangers. Milena remembered the tales of monsters. Yes, but worse. An emperor once sought to conquer the wasteland with an army, only to return years later alone, broken and aged. He spoke of barbarians, not beasts, as the greatest threat, silent predators hidden in the snow. Milena listened quietly, aware of the countless rumors. Yet, she also noticed something odd from afar. The snow stirred unnaturally. Catching the attention of the expedition team, they halted. A silhouette moved. Tension rose. One scout announced both good and bad news. The figure was small, but it was approaching fast. The wind howled as everyone, inside and outside, froze in anticipation. Whatever it wasn't just approaching, it was hunting. From the blizzard emerged a lone figure, massive in stature but calm in presence. The caravan guards tense, weapons ready, expecting a beast, only to pause in disbelief. The figure was human, or so it seemed. As the wind cleared, his massive frame and battle-worn gear became visible. One muttered the word, "Barbarian." Ashen hair and confident steps revealed his identity: Kettle, the Ashen Barbarian. He greeted them with a disarming smile, expressing surprise at encountering others in such a remote and deadly place. When asked if he was a merchant, he denied it with a chuckle. Then he pointed. Someone was hiding in the carriage. The guards flinched. Realizing he had seen through their formation, inside the carriage, Milena silently observed the exchange. The guards, unsure of his intent, braced for conflict. But Kettle made a surprising request. He wished to be hired as a guide. Shocked, they hesitated. He clarified. He wasn't a threat if he had meant harm. They'd already be dead. Though the wasteland feared barbarians as monsters, Kettle stood apart. Whether a chance ally or hidden danger, one truth became clear. The White Wasteland had just grown more unpredictable. Tension thickened in the frozen air as the guards remained speechless. Even their captain hesitated before responding. A distant sound echoed through the wasteland, a faint, rhythmic knock. Milena and the others heard it, and unease spread across the camp. Confused and on edge, one of the guards explained that the barbarian Kettle wished to be hired as a mercenary. Malena considered it carefully. She knew full well what facing him would cost, possibly everything. She made her decision, tell him we accept. Her voice was calm but decisive. The agreement was relayed and Kettle accepted with a smile. "That's great news," he said smoothly, stepping forward, not toward the group but toward the carriage. The captain tensed. Kettle brushed him off casually, stating he wanted to speak directly with whoever was in charge. Despite the captain's warning glare, Kettle remained unshaken. "If I were hostile, you'd be dead already," he reminded. The guards debated among themselves. Even with Malena's approval, some still feared letting him approach. One voice spoke up, warning that trying to stop Kettle would be useless. A dark aura began to radiate around him again. His strength was no myth. Malena steps forward, silencing her startled butler. A knock echoes. Her eyes widen. The barbarian waits outside. Calmly, he asks for entry. After a moment's hesitation, she agrees outside. Kettle's eyes glow with quiet intensity as he prepares to meet the noblewoman face to face. Kettle, the towering barbarian, entered the hall with quiet authority. His sudden presence startled the butler, who instinctively recoiled in fear. But Kettle, calm and composed, made it clear he meant no harm. Despite his peaceful words, the butler attacked in panic, only to be effortlessly restrained. From across the room, Malena watched in disbelief, recognizing Kettle as the legendary barbarian she'd only heard of in tales. Soon after, formal introductions followed. Malena, still cautious, greeted him politely. Kettle responded in kind, impressed by the warmth of the hall and unnatural comfort in the heart of the snowy wilderness. Malena explained that magic maintained the indoor climate, and Kettle acknowledged its usefulness, but he quickly reminded them of the dangers that still lurked outside, offering his strength and protection. However, Kettle had one condition in return for his protection. He requested something valuable: knowledge. He sought to understand the world beyond the snowfields. Malena hesitated but recognized she had little choice. She agreed to his terms. At last, the air softened. Malena introduced herself formally as Malena of House Akasha. Kettle, in turn, gave his name. The agreement was sealed, an alliance born between the barbarian outsider and the noblewoman of the north. Kettle was once an ordinary man from a modern world longing for adventure. One day, he awoke in a snowfield, reborn in the body of a barbarian. There was no time to question the how or why. He had to survive with nothing but primal instinct. He hunted, fought beasts, and endured the merciless cold years passed without measure. The only constant was his struggle to live. Bound to the snowfield by a mysterious force, he remained trapped despite his strength. It was only when he noticed occasional outsiders passing through, merchants, adventurers, soldiers, that he realized something crucial. Beyond the snowfield lay the fantasy world he had always dreamed of. That knowledge fueled his resolve. No longer surviving for survival's sake, Kettle began to act with purpose. He hunted larger monsters, completed system-assigned missions, and carved a path forward through sheer determination. He unlocked new strengths, gaining the hope of eventually breaking free. Now standing before Malena, he reflects on his journey. Despite being feared as a barbarian, his understanding of the world is sharp. When he hears the clatter of weapons from her wagons, he immediately suspects military transport. War, it seems, ravages the outside world too, reminding him that fantasy also brings conflict. As Kettle continued to learn about the outside world, Malena explained a rare and powerful force known as mystery. Only a select few could sense or wield it, and their abilities were ranked, from third-rate users barely capable of sensing mystery, to the second- and first-rate individuals who could manipulate it as mana or aura. The power scaled quickly. Above them stood the transcendents, beings who defied normal limits and shaped nature itself. Even greater were the heroes, legendary entities whose sheer existence was a force of change. Kettle listened intently, drawn by the potential these ranks represented. For so long, he had survived without direction. Now he felt the stirrings of purpose, to meet those who wielded such powers and to find where he truly belonged. He confessed his desperation to escape the snowfield, no longer out of survival, but to find meaning. Malena, surprised by his intensity, questioned his identity. When she mentioned legends about barbarians, Kettle realized that tales of his existence had somehow reached beyond the frost. Their bond deepened. Malena, burdened by her own mission, admitted her group's purpose, gathering funds for a war effort. Conflict loomed outside, and the two now shared more than curiosity. They shared a reason to fight forward. Malena revealed that her noble house, once prosperous through generations of commerce, had fallen into heavy debt due to reckless investments. Their current journey was an attempt to restore the family's dignity by repaying the debt through risky arms trade. Kettle quickly deduced that their true objective was to supply weapons to the kingdom, which was locked in war with the Empire. His insight startled Milena, who began to question whether he was truly a barbarian. Before the tension could settle, the ground shook and chaos erupted outside. A violent impact hit their carriage, throwing the guards into alarm. Kettle immediately sensed danger. Rising calmly, he looked toward the source of the disruption. His gaze hardened as he declared the situation clearly. There were uninvited guests approaching, and they were not welcome. A monstrous black slime emerged from the snowfield, its ominous glow halting the group of explorers in their tracks. Shocked by its appearance, Milena quickly recognized it from ancient records, an entity known as the Black Slime. A rare creature barely documented, often mentioned in tales about the deadly white snowfield. Only a few who ventured there had lived to report it. Milena explained the creature's elusive nature and how some survivors even noted its edibility, chewy and surprisingly palatable. Kettle, unfazed by the danger, dismissed her warning and encouraged trying one, prompting a flustered reaction from Milena. Without warning, the slime lunged forward. Panic ensued among the group. Milena cried out as the beast charged, its intent unmistakably hostile. Kettle, however, remained still. When Milena pleaded, he reminded her of the contract. They had agreed he would only act in the face of true danger. The team, he claimed, could manage the threat. Despite his calm demeanor, Kettle analyzed the situation carefully. The slime's power gave insight into the world's strength level. As the creature struck, the frontline warriors formed a shield wall to block the assault. However, their defenses buckled under pressure, and the monster's force sent one flying back, injured. The black slime struck violently, knocking down a soldier mid-air with brutal force. Screams echoed as more were hurled back by the creature's relentless advance. Amid the chaos, one fighter was flung against the snow, gasping from the impact. The creature surged forward, mouth gaping and radiating malice. The team quickly regrouped. Their leader barked out critical instructions. Black slimes could only move in straight lines. With that knowledge, they scattered, using the terrain to their advantage. Coordination improved. The soldiers maneuvered rapidly, repositioning to bait and flank the monster. One fighter launched a swift counterattack, targeting the slime's exposed side. The creature recoiled, hissing in pain, but retaliated fiercely. Undeterred, another soldier reinforced the assault, his weapon glowing green with magical energy. The slime roared louder, its eyes flashing, but the pressure didn't relent. The team continued their strikes, avoiding direct paths and focusing on coordinated movements. Their leader urged them not to stop attacking. The slime's body began to ripple under the continuous blows. Realizing blunt attacks were ineffective, he redirected their efforts, aimed for the core hidden inside. One soldier leapt forward, channeling energy into a vertical slash. His weapon pierced deep, striking a glowing red gem, the monster's core ending its rampage. Instantly, the battlefield grew silent as the black slime finally collapsed, dissolving into steam. Cheers erupted from the group as they confirmed their victory. Shouts of triumph filled the air, and even Milena, overwhelmed with relief, joined in celebration. Kettle, however, remained silent, expression unreadable. Suddenly, growling echoed from the nearby trees. A beast lunged out, another threat. One soldier reacted quickly, commanding an attack aimed at its neck. The wolf-like monster was swiftly overwhelmed and slain, but not without injuries. As calm returned, the team began to reflect. Some questioned whether the stories about the white snowfield were exaggerated. Their success, though hard-won, seemed to contradict the grim legends. Yet doubts lingered, especially about Kettle's role. Though powerful, Kettle had not fought. Some began whispering, was he truly deserving of such special treatment? Milena defended him, but one soldier stepped forward, requesting to challenge Kettle, not out of rebellion, but to test the fairness of his reputation. Milena was visibly uneasy, but didn't immediately refuse. The request carried weight. The team, still recovering from the ordeal, now faced a new tension, not from monsters, but from within Kettle. Having heard everything, simply observed in silence, waiting to see how it would unfold. Though challenged, Kettle calmly declined the duel, stating others had arrived first. Moments later, a new threat revealed itself, ominous, powerful, and unlike anything before. The air turned heavy as monstrous entities emerged, their leaders speaking with eerie malice. The intruders fell into panic as a beast charged with terrifying speed. Towering and twisted, it mocked their efforts, claiming their struggle would only serve as its entertainment. The true danger had just begun, and it demanded more than strength to survive. As the snowy battlefield trembled, a massive serpent burst forth from beneath the ice, roaring toward Milena. She braced herself, but before harm could reach her, Kettle struck with his axe, halting the beast's advance. With calm authority, Kettle stepped forward and warned the serpent to retreat, declaring that the humans were under his protection. The serpent hesitated, questioning Kettle's presence so far from his tribal lands. Kettle offered no explanation and stood firm. The serpent, angered, launched an attack. In response, Kettle's power surged violently. Declaring himself a barbarian of the Yankee tribe, he charged the beast with overwhelming force. The collision shook the ice fields, sending a shockwave outward. As the serpent reeled, Malena watched anxiously. Another warrior attempted to aid, but the force of the battle overwhelmed the scene, forcing him back. Kettle called upon dark energy, preparing to end the confrontation. Malena recognized his technique, an advanced skill requiring immense control. He ascended into the air, wrapped in surging energy, and descended with focused fury. The impact created a massive energy pulse that illuminated the field. Snow and debris scattered in every direction. Malena and her allies shielded themselves, eyes wide, as Kettle's power reshaped the battlefield. After the intense clash with the serpent, Kettle regrouped with the caravan. The group appeared tense, their gazes cautious. Kettle acknowledged their fear, understanding their hesitation toward him. As the wagons resumed their slow march through the snow, he turned to Malena, expressing curiosity about her presence on such a dangerous mission. Inside the warmth of a tent, Malena shared her background. Her composed speech and demeanor revealed she was no ordinary envoy. She disclosed that she was the first daughter of a concubine, a political pawn discarded after failing to gain influence. Malena and her mother lived under the weight of noble status with none of its privileges, treated as little more than servants in their own house. Despite the risks, she had volunteered for this mission, seeking to prove herself. Kettle listened with reserved respect, noting her intellect and ambition. Their conversation was interrupted as the caravan halted. Snow-covered hills gave way to an unexpected sight, lush green grass peeking through the frost. They had reached their destination. Later, Malena questioned Kettle about his earlier comment. He reaffirmed his words, recognizing her efforts to save her collapsing household. While her family teetered on ruin, she alone chose action over survival. Malena questioned Kettle's understanding of her ambitions. With calm certainty, he affirmed her intent to gain control of her fractured household. Though momentarily stunned, she realized he saw through her completely. Recognizing his insight and strength, she invited him to join her cause. Kettle declined politely, choosing to remain in the snowfields for now. In response, she gifted him a brooch, asking him to accept it if not her offer. Before parting, Malena entrusted him with a request. If he ever visited the outside world, he should seek her family and support her siblings. Kettle accepted the brooch, promising to remember. Years passed, the snowfields endured their silence, but change stirred. One by one, the quests Kettle undertook were fulfilled. At last, a system message declared the completion of his final task. Permission granted to leave the snowfields. With a determined step, Kettle crossed the boundary. His long-awaited journey into the true fantasy world had finally begun. After escaping the harsh snowy plains, Kettle finally stood in a vibrant forest surrounded by the warmth of nature. The smells of grass, beasts, and flowing rivers awakened his senses, fragments of life absent from his previous isolation. Relieved, he cursed the frozen land behind him and vowed never to return. Now in a fantasy world he had only dreamed of, Kettle reflected on his journey. Though his arrival had been brutal, he endured. The new world shimmered with illusions, magic, and ancient races. He was determined to survive and even thrive. In this realm of dragons and elves, the desire to live had fueled him through endless blizzards. As he wandered, Kettle spotted signs of civilization, a village ahead. Unlike the barbarian clans who couldn't grasp his plea for shelter, this place seemed organized. He prepared to introduce himself properly. Suddenly, a group of elf villagers arrived, claiming the land as their new home. Kettle, hiding behind a tree, was horrified to realize they chose the same spot he did. Later, the elves questioned their safety. Though the elder assured them the location was remote, Kettle remained uneasy. The snowy plains and the dangers they held were closer than anyone realized. A magical barrier was set to protect the elf village, designed to repel any threat from beyond. Confident in the queen's power, the elder assured the villagers of their safety, believing that even the snowy plains monsters couldn't break through. But unbeknownst to them, Kettle, wandering nearby, accidentally brushed against something unseen. A faint rupture rippled through the air. He paused, sensing a tear in the surroundings, but dismissed it. As he continued his path, unsure of his direction, a sudden rustle caught his attention. A small elf girl emerged from the brush, looking lost and anxious. Kettle stared in disbelief, his first real encounter with an elf. It was a moment he'd long imagined in dreams. To him, it was a symbol of having truly arrived in this fantastical world. However, the girl was clearly frightened and disoriented. She whispered to herself in panic, unsure of where she had wandered. When Kettle tried to approach, she panicked at his towering form and passed out cold from fear. Kettle crouched beside her, confused by the overreaction. He hadn't even spoken yet. With no better option, he decided to bring her back to her people. Hoping the elves would see his intentions as noble, Kettle smiled faintly, imagining that returning the elf child would earn him trust. Holding her gently, he walked toward the village, unaware of the panic his appearance would cause. An elven woman screamed upon seeing him with the unconscious child, assuming the worst. Others quickly gathered, their alarm rising as they shouted accusations of kidnapping. Chaos erupted. The elder couldn't believe a human had breached their hidden barrier-protected land. A younger elf reported a crack in the barrier, likely the one Kettle had unknowingly triggered. The queen was away, and the situation was spiraling. Kettle tried to explain, but his towering figure and grim appearance only fueled suspicion. The villagers misread his actions as hostile, fearing for the child. They drew weapons and prepared for combat. Kettle's inner frustration grew. He had done nothing wrong, yet now faced armed hostility. He let the girl down gently, hoping she'd return to her people. Instead, she hesitated, unsure and emotional. His attempt at kindness was misunderstood as a threat. Soon, magical attacks flew his way. The villagers declared him an enemy. Kettle stood his ground, confused and disappointed, silently questioning why no one was listening, when all he wanted was to help. Kettle stood in disbelief as he observed the scene before him. He had heard that elves were peaceful forest dwellers, known for their grace and calm demeanor. But the reality didn't align with the tales. The elves in this forest were not gentle. One had just brutally torn apart a wild beast without hesitation. Before Kettle could process this, magical projectiles rained down from the sky, surrounding him in a defensive pattern. The elves seemed to treat him as a threat, attacking on sight. He remained still, trying to remain calm. With a deep breath, he focused his strength. A violent surge of energy exploded outward from his body, creating a massive shockwave that threw several elves into the air. Trees bent, the earth split, and magic swirled in the aftermath of the release. Those still standing hastily tried to erect a barrier. After the dust settled, Kettle walked toward the shaken survivors. A staff-wielding elder elf stood cautiously ahead. Kettle paused, then declared he was not their enemy. The elder listened, though unsure. Inwardly, Kettle realized he may have gone too far in his response. Before peace could settle, a fiery spell suddenly launched toward him, reigniting the conflict. As the tension escalated, a powerful presence emerged. A regal elf woman named Hezian Karuzia, adorned in ceremonial green, stepped forward. She was Queen Elquinis, ruler of the Leaf Clan. The elves quickly knelt, calling her Your Majesty. Upon learning that a human had attacked them, her expression turned grave. Hezian surveyed the scene and identified Kettle as the source of chaos. Without hesitation, she launched an attack, but Kettle withstood it without injury. Stunning the observing elves, Kettle stepped forward, asking to explain. But the queen remained cautious. Her stance hardened as she declared the forest unsafe, assuming Kettle was another hostile human. Despite his calm demeanor, her mistrust of humans was evident. Hezian saw his strength not as defense, but as threat. The queen prepared her next magical strike, vowing to punish him for perceived greed and intrusion. Kettle, realizing she wasn't listening, wondered if the issue was communication or deep-rooted animosity. He recalled from his time in the tundra, sometimes strength earns attention. A fierce energy began to swirl around him as he braced for conflict. The queen loosed her enchanted arrow, summoning a massive spirit beast. In response, Kettle countered with a powerful strike of his own, the clash shaking the ground. Kettle's strike collided with Hezian's summoned spirit beast, releasing a thunderous blast that sent shockwaves through the forest. The queen was knocked back, stunned by the raw force. As the magical energy dispersed, she barely kept her footing, eyes wide in disbelief. Kettle stepped forward, momentarily scratching his head, realizing his strength had once again gone beyond his intent. The surrounding elves were shaken. Hezian tried to grasp the scale of power she had just witnessed. Silently, she acknowledged Kettle's dominance, even if just from one clash. Her pride wavered, but her resolve did not. With urgency, she ordered the elves to retreat, her voice firm as she told everyone to flee immediately. Even as she recognized Kettle's strength, she refused to concede. Declaring his efforts meaningless, she prepared one final response. With solemn focus, Hezian began an ancient summoning, invoking flames of purity and darkness. She called forth a divine beast, a bull wreathed in blazing fire, its horns burning like the sun. Kettle, however, looked on in awe. The bull was unlike the grotesque summons he had seen in the tundra. This one truly embodied fantasy. With wonder in his voice, he smiled, realizing he was now facing a true mythical spirit. Kettle stood in awe as a fiery beast materialized before him, An elemental creature wreathed in flames, summoned through powerful magic. He marveled at the creature's form, realizing he was truly in a world governed by fantasy. But admiration quickly turned to tension. The summoned beast viewed Kettle as a threat, believing humans had once defiled its sacred land with a fierce glare. It vowed to reduce him to ash. The beast lunged, igniting the ground beneath it. Flames tore through the landscape as it charged. Without hesitation, Kettle braced himself, his instincts taking control. The two forces collided in a violent explosion that shook the earth. Nearby, Hesian, the elf queen, watched the clash unfold. Concern flickered in her eyes as the inferno spread. She turned, sensing Kettle's overwhelming energy rising. The barbarian faced the beast without fear, stating that its monstrous form only made it easier for him to fight. Kettle struck with brutal strength. His assault was relentless, his movements fueled by primal resolve. The beast tried to retaliate, but Kettle's blow sent it crashing down in a blinding burst. The land quaked again as flames engulfed the area, forcing Hesian to shield herself. Kettle emerged, unyielding in the firelight. The battlefield lay silent under swirling dust and ash. Hesian knelt amidst the wreckage, stunned by the scale of destruction. The crater before her seemed impossible, formed by a single man. As the wind carried the debris away, Kettle approached with calm steps, terrified but protective. Hesian pleaded for mercy, asking him to spare her kin. Kettle paused, his towering figure casting a shadow. Then, firmly, he declared that he was not her enemy. Shock swept over Hesian. She watched him closely, and after a long exchange came to understand that he had no hostile intent. With guilt in her voice, Hesian apologized for their misjudgment. They had assumed Kettle was a threat, even though he had rescued one of their own. She admitted their fear came from being chased by other humans. Kettle accepted the apology with a wry smile, explaining it was his first time encountering elves. When he mentioned the White Wasteland, Hesian grew visibly alarmed. That region was deemed uninhabitable, yet Kettle survived there. Known as the Ashen Barbarian, he had endured what others could not. She wondered if others might also emerge from that cursed place. Kettle responded quietly. He doubted it. His survival was likely an anomaly born from a rare quest. Following their tense but honest exchange, Hesian relaxed, relieved that Kettle posed no threat. Curious, she asked about the fiery bowl that had appeared earlier. Kettle explained bluntly that he had split the creature in half, but Hesian clarified it was merely a spirit, one that would naturally return to its realm when unsummoned. Reassured, she offered to repay his help, pledging support if there was anything he needed. Kettle, intrigued by the concept of spirits, asked whether non-elves could form contracts with them. Hesian admitted it was rare but possible, though only for humans with strong connections to nature. She hesitated, then revealed a path, Elfos Sagrado, the sacred land of the elves and the dwelling place of their god. There, such a contract might be possible. She warned, however, that the location was secret and protected fiercely. Even the elves rarely shared it. Still, she entrusted Kettle with a token of passage. Recognizing his potential, grateful Kettle accepted it. As they formally exchanged names, Hesian Karisu and Ketal the Barbarian, a quiet bond formed. But no time was wasted. Almost immediately after, Ketal launched himself once more into battle, tearing through the forest terrain, his power undiminished and his journey far from over. A violent gust tore through the forest as Kettle descended from above, crashing into the heart of the Lakarn territory. Alarmed guards scrambled to respond to the unexpected quake. The outpost defenses were raised, but it was too late. Kettle emerged through the smoke calm and imposing. His mere presence silenced the soldiers. Recognition sparked fear in their eyes, as they muttered his name, realizing exactly who had arrived. Kettle, a towering barbarian clad in fur and muscle, approached a group of startled guards patrolling the outskirts. His sudden appearance caused a stir, but he remained calm, introducing himself without hostility. The guards, alarmed by the sight of his powerful frame and recognizing a distinct scar on his chest, whispered rumors about the infamous Ashen Barbarian. As Kettle neared the city gate, the guards braced themselves, weapons drawn. They ordered him to halt, fearing a threat. Kettle, unfazed, calmly stated that he wasn't their enemy. Instead of provoking a fight, he expressed his wish to enter their territory. His request baffled them, and he was eventually escorted inside for questioning. Seated before a local officer, Kettle explained that he wished to pass through the territory and, if possible, remain for a short while. When asked for identification, Kettle admitted he had none, but he produced a unique emblem passed to him by someone of status. The officer was taken aback. It was the crest of House Akasha, a powerful house from another kingdom. Although not from their own nation, the symbol indicated influence. Uncertain but intrigued, The officer considered Kettle's mysterious yet respectful presence. The officer, though unsure about Kettle's identity, decided to allow his entry under one condition: Kettle must join a party to clear a nearby dungeon. The purpose was to confirm that Kettle wasn't a threat and observe his behavior. Kettle agreed without hesitation. However, there was an additional demand: he had to report all events occurring inside the dungeon in detail. As he accepted the task, the officer wondered aloud whether Kettle was truly a barbarian. Kettle confirmed he was, surprising the officer, who had never encountered a barbarian so articulate and composed. Kettle's unexpected demeanor began to shift the perception of his kind. Shortly after, Kettle met his temporary allies, two men already present in the waiting area. One, a self-proclaimed paladin named Alexandro, was quickly mocked by another party member, the thief Kasan Hark. The two clashed over their ideals and pride, exchanging insults and almost coming to blows. Before things escalated further, a calm voice interrupted. A female cleric entered the room, attempting to de-escalate the tension. She introduced herself as Hayes, a follower of Chaldesia. Her peaceful presence brought the group to temporary order as they prepared to face the dungeon mission together. As the sun dipped low, the newly formed party prepared to leave for their dungeon assignment. The cleric Hayes reminded them that a dungeon party required 4 members just as she spoke. A knock echoed through the room, signaling the arrival of the final member. The guard hoped this one would be normal. The door opened, and in walked Kettle, towering over everyone. His imposing presence stunned the room into silence. Despite his size and intimidating aura, Kettle greeted them cheerfully and confirmed he was part of their party. The group, visibly shaken, struggled to comprehend his presence. Even the thief, Kasan, and the paladin, Alessandro, were left speechless. Kettle formally introduced himself, followed by Kasan identifying as a thief, Alessandro as a paladin, and finally Hayes revealing herself as a cleric of Chaldesia. Kettle was intrigued by Hayes' faith, especially upon learning her god was associated with isolation, a belief not commonly revered. With brief tension still lingering, a soldier stepped in and asked if everyone was ready, one by one. They nodded in silence. Without further delay, the group set out. After a quiet journey, the party reached the dungeon's entrance. The real trial was about to begin. The group arrived at the dungeon nestled within the forest. It was a 5-floor structure filled with undead monsters. Their mission was clear: enter, eliminate the threats, and return with proof to validate their worth and secure entry. Kasan Hark flinched at being addressed so formally. The group stood at a forested path, sunlight filtering through the leaves. Kettle, the towering barbarian, urged a relaxed tone, reminding everyone they were a team, not a hierarchy. Nervously, Kasan composed himself and proposed the formation. Kettle and Alexandra would lead the front, while he would monitor for traps. He then suggested that Hayes, the cleric, support the team from the rear using her abilities. The others agreed, and after confirming their roles, the group moved out toward the dungeon. Entering a cold, dark cavern, the team advanced cautiously. Despite alertness, the area felt too quiet. Hayes noted the eerie silence and absence of traps. Suspicion crept in. Suddenly, Kasan sensed something. Bones littered the ground ahead, undisturbed skeletons. Kettle confirmed the threat, though still. These were monsters, dormant until provoked. The team held back, analyzing them. These undead had no antennae but posed clear danger. Kasan explained that skeletons were relentless, not easily stopped even when dismembered. As one began to stir, glowing with ominous blue flames, it became clear this dungeon wasn't ordinary. The skeletal enemies were resilient and well defended. Orders were given, defensive stances readied. The battle was about to begin. Kasan Hark quickly explained the weak points of skeletons, specifically their neck joints, and warned the team that multiple hits might be needed to bring one down. Kettle acknowledged with a nod as he advanced. A skeleton jerked upright from the ground with sudden clattering movement. Its glowing blue eyes flared to life. Alexandro raised his shield while Hayes began casting a holy spell, her light piercing the darkness. Kasan moved into position, blades at the ready, while Kettle tightened his stance. The undead surged forward, but the team held formation. Kettle delivered a powerful blow, smashing a skeleton's head clean off. The body collapsed instantly. Everyone froze in awe, while the others stood shocked. Kettle calmly confirmed that Kasan's advice was accurate. The skeleton stopped moving once decapitated. However, Kasan grew uneasy. That wasn't the strategy he meant to rely on. Inwardly, he analyzed the skeleton's resilience. Their bones, hardened by dungeon mana, were tougher than expected. Normally, dismembering them required precision and repeated strikes. Yet Kettle bypassed the conventional method. His raw power simply overwhelmed the enemy. Kasan realized that Kettle's strength was beyond ordinary. What should have been a trial of tactics had become a one-man display of brute force and dominance. After Kettle's overwhelming display of brute force, the team was left stunned. Alexandro, Hayes, and Kassan questioned whether he was even human. As they hesitated, Kettle, calm and unbothered, casually urged them to press forward. The others scrambled after him, flustered and fearful. Hayes and Alexandro muttered about not wanting to die, highlighting how shaken they were by the dungeon's danger and Kettle's sheer might. As they ventured deeper, Kettle suddenly froze. Something felt off. A single skeleton stirred unnaturally, followed by the eerie sound of bones clattering in the dark. The group braced for another wave. Hayes screamed in alarm while Alexandro readied his weapon. Kettle, however, calmly requested that they let him handle the next wave alone. Surprised but trusting, the group stepped back as he faced the skeletal enemies. With eerie calm, Kettle began analyzing the undead, curious about how they were constructed. As a skeleton lunged forward, he allowed it to approach, observing its movement. Even after being struck, he maintained a grin, fascinated rather than alarmed. The others watched, confused and unsure of his intent. Kettle wasn't just fighting, he was studying. This wasn't about brute force anymore. It was something far more calculated and perhaps far more dangerous. Kettle engaged the skeleton with a playful yet analytical approach. Instead of delivering an immediate blow, he intercepted its attack, catching the blade with his bare hand. With a grin, he taunted the undead, curious how it would function without its limbs. With swift precision, he tore off its arm, leaving the creature confused. The skeleton paused momentarily, struggling to balance its movements. Kettle remained amused, asking rhetorically how it planned to reattach the arm. The moment it attempted to retaliate with its remaining weapon, he disarmed it completely. The skeleton's skull cracked violently under Kettle's final blow. Despite the unsettling sight, Kettle treated it like a learning opportunity. Hayes and Alexandro, watching nearby, were clearly disturbed by the savagery. Meanwhile, the other skeletons observing from the shadows remained still, unnerved by the display. Among them, one whispered with fear and recognition, acknowledging Kettle as something terrifying. A true barbarian. Kettle observed the severed skull rolling across the ground, its glowing eyes still active. To the team's surprise, the detached head began moving on its own, twitching with unnatural energy. Kassan and the others watched silently as Kettle calmly stepped forward and pinned the skull beneath his foot, confirming that even decapitated skeletons could remain active. After ensuring the threat was neutralized, Kettle returned to the group and apologized for the delay. The others welcomed him back, visibly relieved. With the moment settled, Kettle signaled the team to resume their advance. They regrouped and proceeded cautiously down a dark corridor, eventually reaching a staircase. Descending together, they entered a deeper chamber, marking the beginning of the second floor of the dungeon. The mood turned tense. An ominous atmosphere lingered. Hayes and Alexandro exchanged glances, and Kassan wiped sweat from his brow. Realizing the group was fatigued, Kettle suggested a short rest. The others agreed instantly, clearly exhausted. As they settled down, Kettle appeared lost in thought. He finally admitted there was something about the dungeon that puzzled him. Despite his strength, he confessed his understanding of its structure and mechanics was lacking. The team, surprised by his humility, listened attentively, ready to hear his concerns. As the group rested, Kettle admitted his understanding of the dungeon's origin was lacking. Hayes, initially flustered by his interest, quickly reassured him that his curiosity was welcome. She began explaining the basics. Dungeons, though mysterious, were treated as natural phenomena. Most appeared suddenly, often resembling caves or towers, usually near populated areas. Kassan elaborated further, noting how these formations seemed to emerge as if intentionally placed near settlements. This drew Kettle's attention. Such strategic placement appeared too deliberate for a random occurrence. Hayes continued, stating that when a dungeon appears, local lords assess the threat level. If necessary, guilds or soldiers are dispatched to clear them. Kettle asked whether they were created intentionally. Hayes clarified that no one truly creates dungeons. They simply manifest. However, she admitted they often seem designed to attract explorers with rewards and challenge. A boss typically waits at the final floor, offering significant loot upon defeat. Kettle quietly remarked how much this resembled a structured game, causing Hayes brief confusion. His final question was simple, yet loaded. Who makes these dungeons? The team paused. Hayes hesitated, reflecting on how unnaturally perfect the design seemed. For something labeled natural, the dungeon felt too engineered to dismiss outright. Kassan reflected on Kettle's question about dungeon origins, realizing he had never truly questioned the nature of the world around him. He had always accepted dungeons as a natural phenomenon, much like everyone else. Yet Kettle's analytical thinking challenged that belief. As a barbarian, Kettle defied every stereotype, calm, thoughtful, and methodical. Kasan couldn't help but wonder if Kettle truly represented his kind at all. After a short rest, Kettle signaled the group to move again. The party resumed their exploration deeper into the dungeon. Not long after, they stumbled upon a treasure chest resting quietly in an open space. Curious, Kettle asked about it, and Hayes explained it was one of the maze's rewards. However, the chest was locked. Kettle turned to Kasan, requesting that he open it. Being a rogue, the task naturally fell to him, but Kasan was caught off guard. He lacked the actual skill to pick locks, an unqualified rogue without guild recognition. Internally panicking, he realized he couldn't reveal the truth. Kettle's hopeful expression made it even harder to admit. The pressure built within him, though he wanted to be honest. He feared losing Kettle's trust more than anything else. And so, Kasan stood, frozen, before the chest, faced with Kettle's hopeful gaze and the locked treasure chest.